20 years ago, Hurricane Katrina carved a path of destruction across the United States Gulf Coast. While the flooding of New Orleans dominates the collective memory, the same storm set in motion a quieter, slow-motion disaster that now threatens to erase an Alabama barrier island. This is the story of Dauphin Island and its fight to stay on the map. On August 29, 2005, Katrina's most intense quadrant swept across the island, even though the storm's eye was nearly 100 miles away. A surge powerful enough to split the narrow west end left a gap more than 1 mile wide. More than 300 homes were destroyed, and vast stretches of sand were stripped from the southern shore and shoved landward, effectively sliding the island toward the mainland. The breach never truly healed. Each subsequent storm has widened scars and carried away more sand, while rising seas nibble at what remains. NOAA gauges show local sea level climbing at a pace of roughly 1.45 feet per century, an acceleration that has quickened since 2010. For the island's roughly 2,000 residents, the threat isn't theoretical. Some still pay property taxes on lots that now sit underwater. Mayor Jeff Collier counts about 50 such underwater lots in one neighborhood alone. Many surviving houses, perched on stilts, now have their foundations standing directly in the Gulf, yet some are still rented to vacationers. The community refuses to surrender. Using settlement money from the Deepwater Horizon spill, a recent project on the more stable East End managed to push Gulf waters back as much as 400 feet. Along the lone causeway that links Dauphin Island to the mainland and serves as its evacuation route, another major effort is underway. Phase 1 of the Dauphin Island Causeway Shoreline Restoration Project wrapped up in September 2024 with segmented breakwaters guarding a 3.5-mile stretch. Phase 2, launched in March 2025, is using dredged material from the Mobile Harbor Deepening and Widening Project to create roughly 80 acres of new marsh, adding an extra buffer for both the road and surrounding wetlands. The bigger battle is on the ravaged West End. A $60 million beach restoration plan is on the drawing board, but paying for it is daunting. Hopes dimmed in April 2025 when FEMA ended the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities program, a key source of federal money for projects like this. Legal and legislative challenges are in motion. Yet, as the mayor puts it, the town is in limbo, waiting to see if any federal help will materialize. Why does Dauphin Island matter beyond its zip code? Barrier islands are the mainland's first line of defense, absorbing storm surge that would otherwise slam into coastal cities and the busy port of Mobile. They're also vital habitat, especially for migratory birds that depend on these slivers of sand for rest and refuge. The struggle here previews the choices many coastal communities will face as seas rise and storms intensify. Rebuild, retreat, or invent new ways to hold the water back. 20 years after Katrina, the storm's legacy on Dauphin Island isn't history. It's an unfolding battle for survival, fought grain of sand by grain of sand.
Have you ever clicked buy on something overseas and watched it land on your doorstep tax-free a few days later? That easy bit of global shopping is about to hit a wall. Postal services in more than 20 countries have abruptly stopped sending most parcels to the United States, and the ripple effects will reach straight into your wallet and your patience. The culprit is a little-known rule called de minimis. In place since 1938, it lets small packages enter the U.S. without tariffs, taxes, or heavy paperwork. Since 2016, anything worth under $800 sailed through untouched. That generous ceiling fueled a boom in cross-border e-commerce. In 2024 alone, 1.3 billion tax-free packages worth nearly $65 billion cleared U.S. customs, over 4 million a day, most with only a cursory glance. All of that ends this Friday, August 29, 2025. An executive order from President Donald Trump scraps the exemption for every country, expanding a restriction that already applied to China and Hong Kong. The administration argues the rule was being abused, letting foreign sellers dodge taxes, undercut U.S. businesses, and funnel illicit drugs like fentanyl through the mail. The announcement sent shockwaves through global postal networks. National carriers in the UK, Germany, France, Japan, India, Australia, and many others have pressed pause on parcels bound for America. Letters and documents still move, but the stream of goods has all but dried up. Why stop entirely? Confusion. Washington confirmed the new rules on August 15th, leaving foreign posts 2 weeks to rewrite decades of procedure. Key questions remain unanswered. Who collects the new taxes? How are they paid? What extra data must accompany each box, and how is it transmitted? Systems built for speed now have to treat millions of $5 trinkets like full-blown commercial imports, complete with detailed forms, duty calculations, and billing software that doesn't yet exist. Until that infrastructure is in place, most postal operators have chosen the safest option: don't ship at all. What does that mean for U.S. shoppers? Sticker shock. The duty-free era is over. Every parcel will face import taxes, often around 15% from the European Union, and postal carriers may tack on flat processing fees of $80, $160, even $200 to cover their costs. That $5 gadget could arrive with a bill many times its price. Longer waits. No more fast pass through customs. Every package now needs a full declaration and inspection. Deliveries that once took a week could stretch far longer. Fewer choices. Small overseas sellers like independent artisans on Etsy may simply stop serving the U.S. market rather than watch new fees erase their profits. Even giant platforms such as Shein and Temu, built on the de minimis loophole, face major upheaval. Private couriers like DHL and FedEx are still picking up because they already handle customs duties, but they cost more, and every extra tariff will land on the customer. Larger retailers might pivot to bulk shipping, sending containers to U.S. warehouses and fulfilling orders domestically. But that shift isn't cheap or quick. A single change in U.S. trade policy has jammed the gears of global logistics. Until clearer guidelines emerge and foreign postal systems adapt, expect higher prices, longer delays, and a very different experience the next time you click buy from abroad. Welcome to AITV News. Tonight we're breaking down a developing story with potentially huge consequences for every American with a Social Security number. The personal information of over 300 million people may be at risk, according to a new whistleblower complaint from a top official at the Social Security Administration. This official is raising the alarm about a new government group, accusing them of making a copy of the entire Social Security database and moving it to a less secure location. Let's start with the key players. The whistleblower is Charles Borges, the Chief Data Officer at the Social Security Administration. He's essentially the person in charge of keeping the public's data safe. On the other side is a group called the Department of Government Efficiency, also known as DOGE. This department was created by Elon Musk in January 2025 to help the Trump administration cut government spending and improve efficiency. The core of this story is a very serious allegation. Mr. Borges claims that officials from the Department of Government Efficiency, who were also employed by the Social Security Administration, created a live copy of a database called the Numident file. This isn't just any government file. It contains the sensitive personal information of every single person ever issued a Social Security number. We're talking about names, dates and places of birth, addresses, and even family members' names. The complaint alleges this massive database was moved to a cloud computing environment that lacks the usual security and oversight, creating what the complaint calls enormous vulnerabilities. To put this in simple terms, imagine the Social Security database is like all the money and valuables stored inside a secure bank vault. The whistleblower alleges that the Department of Government Efficiency has essentially taken everything out of that vault and moved it to a storage unit with a less reliable lock, all without telling the bank's head of security. So what are the potential consequences if this data were to be compromised? According to the complaint, the risks are immense. It could lead to widespread identity theft on a scale never seen before. Americans could lose access to essential benefits like health care and food assistance. In a worst-case scenario, the government might even be forced to reissue new Social Security numbers for every American, a massive and incredibly costly undertaking. The complaint filed on behalf of Borges states these actions amount to gross mismanagement and abuse of authority and a substantial and specific threat to public health and safety. This situation didn't happen overnight. According to the whistleblower disclosure, the Department of Government Efficiency began seeking access to Social Security data shortly after its creation in January 2025, stating they needed it to combat fraud. This led to a legal battle. In March, a court issued a temporary restraining order to block the Department of Government Efficiency's access to the data. However, that order expired, and in June, the Supreme Court overturned a lower court's ruling granting the Department of Government Efficiency access to the data. It was after this Supreme Court decision in June 2025 that Department of Government Efficiency officials allegedly uploaded the copy of the database to the high-risk cloud server. The complaint points to an internal memo from July, in which a former Musk executive now at the Social Security Administration, Aram Mogdanassi, allegedly accepted the security risks, writing, "I have determined the business need is higher than the security risk associated with this implementation, and I accept all risks." After discovering this, Mr. Borges raised his concerns internally in August, and when he felt nothing was done, he came forward as a whistleblower. His complaint was filed by the Government Accountability Project, a nonprofit organization that protects whistleblowers. Now let's look at the different perspectives. The whistleblower, Charles Borges, and his legal team say he came forward out of a sense of urgency to protect the American public's most sensitive data. DOGE and the Trump administration have consistently argued that they need this data to root out fraud and waste in government programs. They have pointed to this as a core part of their mission to make government more efficient. The Social Security Administration has responded, stating it is not aware of any compromise to this environment. They maintain that the data is stored in a secure system that is walled off from the Internet and that they take all whistleblower complaints seriously. The White House has so far declined to comment on the matter. This is a serious and complex situation. A government watchdog is sounding a critical alarm about the potential exposure of nearly every American's personal data. On the other hand, a government efficiency group insists its actions are necessary to combat fraud. Now the Office of Special Counsel and congressional committees are tasked with investigating these grave allegations to determine the facts and ensure the security of our most sensitive information.